everybody, it's Eric Pappenfoos. It's Friday again, so it must be a buy day, and today we're going to talk about a couple of new arrivals to our sort room here at Midtown Scholar. Let's get right to it. I wanted to talk today about a book which came in from Connecticut, which is a classic of English romantic poetry. It is The Prelude by William Wordsworth, and here is a copy of the title page. Now, this book was originally written in 1798, or started in 1798, and didn't get published till after Wordsworth's death in 1850. It was supposed to be an ode to his friend Coleridge, and it grew out of his and Coleridge's disillusionment with the French Revolution. Hard to really underestimate how disappointed the Romantics were with the promise of the Revolution turning into the Great Terror. It was a book that was a source of frustration for Wordsworth because he was unable to finish it during his lifetime. He kept working at it. He hoped it to be a blank verse that would rival Paradise Lost, would be sort of his generation, or Romanticism's version of Paradise Lost. And we did Paradise Lost on Buy Day a few weeks ago, so check that episode out. But rather than being the fall of humanity as its theme, his theme was himself. And it was autobiographical in nature. And it was a poem about how anyone's life could be perhaps the source of a great epic poem. And that in itself was very, very radical. Now, you will not be lonely as a cloud if you read The Prelude. And another interesting aspect about this is it allows us to talk about states of first editions. So back in the Victorian days, the publisher would print out a lot of copies and then it would have it bound as the book began to sell. Now, Wordsworth was the poet laureate of England, so this book sold very well. But each time new orders came in, the publisher would put in an updated list or a catalog list of the books that they had for sale. And this particular catalog list is noted as being July 1850. And there's some earlier catalog lists and some later catalog lists. And as a result, this is considered a first edition second state because it has the second oldest catalog. And unlike scholars, remember, book collectors tend to like the oldest or the most original form of a book. So a publisher's catalog's a means of determining the state of a first edition. And last week we took you to the Rare Book Room. I wanted to pull out one of our prints that we have at the Rare Book Room. There he is, Wordsworth, as an older man. Perhaps that's the Prelude right there, available for sale in our print room, along with portraits of many fine British and American writers. The other book that I wanted to talk about today came in from a book sale, and it seemed rather nondescript. It's the Diary and Letters of Gouverneur Morris, who was a Pennsylvania delegate to the Constitutional Convention and was a gentleman who believed in a strong federal government. To tie it to Wordsworth, Gouverneur Morris was the ambassador to France during the French Revolution, and he was known for having a peg leg. And at one point, the mob came after him. They'd come after Lafayette, they'd come after Thomas Paine, and now they were coming after Gouverneur Morris. And apparently, according to his granddaughter, who wrote this recollection of his diary and letters, he took his peg leg off, waved it in the air, and said, "I lost this leg fighting for liberty in the American Revolution. Don't you come after me, mob." And the mob apparently backed off. And the problem with that story is that it is entirely apocryphal. Gouverneur Morris did not lose his leg fighting in the American Revolution. He lost it in a carriage accident. He did not serve in the American Army during the Revolution. In fact, he served in what was then considered the National Guard. He served in the New York Guard. And the fact that he served in the National Guard is probably what appealed to the owner of this particular book, who, if you open it up, you can see his bookplate, was Edward Martin. And Edward Martin was a general in the National Guard and a governor of Pennsylvania, who went on to become also a senator from Pennsylvania. And what's interesting about this bookplate is it shows the various aspects of his life up to that point: his time as governor, his time in legal practice, his time in private practice. It was common to have a bookplate designed in that time, and he was governor of Pennsylvania during World War II. He was such a proponent of the National Guard that when Martin died, the General Assembly determined that they would rename Fort Indiantown Gap after Edward Martin. And we're in Harrisburg. Fort Indiantown Gap is about 20 miles or so to the north of here. It's a training ground for the National Guard. The name didn't stick. The National Guard didn't like changing its name, and it's still called Fort Indian Town Gap today. But what they decided to do was they would name something else after Edward Martin. They would name the National Guard Research Library in D.C., the Edward Martin Memorial Library, which at first seems strange, but when you realize he was an avid bibliophile, book collector, and reader, well, maybe it makes sense that the Memorial Library is now named after Edward Martin. This book is a good lesson in always checking the book plates in books and who owned it. At first glance, we bought it simply because we thought it was an interesting book about Gouverneur Morris, but once we learned more about who owned it and why, it became an even better story. All right, we're going to end today with a funny book, and I have to say I thought this book would hold the keys to life in it, and I was going to learn a lot, because who doesn't want a book entitled 101 Things I Wish I Knew when I started using hypnosis? So I was eager to read it. I opened it up. I was thinking it was going to teach me all these wonderful things, but no, in fact, its advice was very practical, including never begin hypnosis when either you or your patient needs to use the bathroom. So, so much for learning the secrets of life. But we'll be back next week for another edition of By Day Friday with a couple books that come in and a funny book as well. Thanks for watching. Remember to like us on YouTube and elsewhere, and leave your comments on Instagram. Thanks.